Hello.
Stan, have you happened to have done anything incredibly stupid lately? Like conjure the spirit of a 17th century evil wizard?
It's back.
There's been a murder. And something tells me the thread count of these sheets is 666.
Man, let me guess. You're a witch who was burned in 1692 and you've come back here to kill me.
Yes.
Sometimes you gotta just let that shit go there, jazz hands.
This is a wraith. The ancients declared them invincible. Wow.
Oh, the ancients didn't have the same shovel technology we have available to us today.
Guys, thanks so much for coming in. Congratulations on season 2. As you told me backstage, it's all sewn up, done. You've shot it, you've edited it. It's all done. You're premiering it on November 1st, right?
Yeah, and the night before on Halloween, there's a marathon of the first season to get caught up. And then the first 2 episodes of season 2 are on November 1st.
And they are the sort of the wrap-up of where we left off at the end of last season,
Yeah, there's a
right?
cliffhanger where Janet was transported back in time that needs to be resolved before we can move forward.
And what made you... Oh, sorry, go ahead. Dan.
We were shooting the season finale of season 1, and Janet was about to be burned at the stake for witchcraft in 1692. And the show doesn't take place in 1692. She traveled back. And Janet said, as we were shooting it, how do I get out of this? And I went, I don't know.
Were you...
The words every actress wants to hear.
Right.
You may not come back.
Oh, you were coming back. I just had to figure it out.
Were you aware at that point when you were shooting that episode that you would come back for a season 2, or was that just in your mind at that moment a good way to wrap up one season?
It was that, yeah. And I thought, well, this might be a good way to get a season 2. Leave it on a big question.
So you come back, you have this
Because if we've learned
go.
anything from season 3 of Twin Peaks, it's that you have to answer the questions that the audience has about the story.
You have to answer them in a very clear, succinct way that
Get
there's
it?
no questions
knock,
asked.
Knock, who's there? Ted. Ted who? Joke.
And do it quickly too. Don't hold off. Don't be silent about it. Don't be quiet or anything. A lot of
Exactly.
action in that.
Yeah.
We could go on for 10 minutes just sort of
Exactly.
making fun of Twin Peaks.
We could, but I have to sweep up this bar for 5 minutes.
So what happened?
Specific. These are very specific references, guys.
I know that is true. Very few people. I mean, very few people I think watch Twin Peaks, and very few people in here sort of get all of these weird references.
Well, if you ever have 18 hours of your life that you want to just throw in the street, I've got a show for you.
Were you, after you shoot this last episode from the first season, you had no idea how you were going to come back or how it was going to wrap up in the second season. What sort of, what did you think when they gave you the scripts and they told you? Obviously, we can't spoil it for anybody, but...
Oh,
Well,
how
he
we
doesn't die.
That much we can't spoil, I think. I feel like I might have gotten a text from Dana like a couple months after we wrapped the first season that just said, I know how to get you back.
Yeah.
So at first I thought it was a revenge thing because he's very vengeful. And then it turned out to be a good thing, and that was that he knew how to get me back from the 1600s.
Yeah.
So I was at least assured that that was going to happen.
That's true. I know how to get you back. What do you mean?
Yeah.
On the show. Oh.
But the scripts are great, and I'm not just saying that because the person who's primarily responsible for them is my boss and sitting next to me. But no, he kind of cracked open one of my favorite, I guess I'll say tropes, devices in television and film, which is time travel, right? Clearly there has to be some of that if I come back.
Time travel and the kind of backwards story. I mean, that
Yeah,
episode
when does it-
itself,
when does-
I don't even, I just rewatched that episode and I was still kind of like, wait, what time are we in right now? And are we backwards? Are we forwards? What's happening here?
Yeah, it was a tricky thing. It was actually the first cut of it was much more confusing because it was a guy in a modern day that has been changed because someone in the past has altered the timeline, remembering things that didn't happen, while at the same time we were flashing back to the thing that did happen. And then
You knock Twin Peaks. Get
I
out
know.
of here,
Well, it's
Dana.
funny because the showed it to the network and they're like, "This doesn't work." I was, "Oh, okay, hang on." And then we went back and uncluttered it. But no, I like puzzles. I like doing puzzles, and the first 2 episodes is a beautiful little watch. It's a beautiful little machine that actually works and tracks. And I don't mind being. It's a little show. It's a half-hour horror comedy, but it's fun to be slightly ambitious within that frame.
John, you've played an incredible number of characters over the course of your career. What originally drew you to Stan when you got the scripts and got offered it?
Dana sent me the script, and I thought it was incredibly ambitious, and I thought Stan was wonderfully damaged, and really great writers like Dana can write damaged characters. In other words, whatever the eccentricities of a character are, you have a chance for the writers to not make it redundant. And so some characters become redundant in the sense of how they participate and contribute to stories is the same stinking thing week in, week out, unless they have damages. And Stan's damages is the loss of his job and his wife. And Dana, that's what I really connected to. And Dana's a nimble enough writer, and he's cerebrally agile enough just to be able to take what I connected to and weave it into this comedy horror, so that this guy has something that reconciles him, that he's kind of Archie Bunker fighting witches, and if you're going to be a complete jackass, then we're going to change the channel. So what's interesting about this guy that makes him redeemable? And then Dana kind of dug into that with me, and it made it really delicious.
It's also hard to write damage that's really funny. I think a lot of people try to put a damaged character in comedy, and they have a really hard time crafting jokes around those damages. So then it just becomes kind of a depressing character.
That's a crazy photo. It's Jack Ruby, and then Oswald is like, and then to me, it's the great thing is the cop next to Oswald is like, what the? And I used to say that, for the rest of that, this guy was clearly a badass. He was a Texas Ranger in the 60s. They had the guy that killed the president, and they handcuffed him to him. So this guy wasn't like a namby-pamby guy. But that for the rest of his life, his friends were going to, hey, we're going to lunch, Bill. Do you want to come? I was performing in Texas. I told that joke, and a guy came up to me after and goes, that guy was my grandfather? And that's exactly what happened.
Wow. Really?
Wow.
Yeah, it goes, it was really PO'd because that photo encapsulated his entire life. Has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
So wait, that is amazing, because the Kennedy assassination meant for that guy, whereas it meant something completely different for the rest of the country and world. For that guy, it meant a joke in a bar that he walked into all the time getting made fun of.
In that regard, you could say that the Kennedy assassination was his 9/11.
Wow. Can we just go back to you using namby-pamby?
Yeah, not to
we
be
award some
namby-pamby,
points for that?
Talking about John and Janet's character too. I mean, Janet is somebody who Evie Barret is this very accomplished woman. She's a sheriff. She's on the success track. She's a single, then she gets divorced. She's a single mom. She wants to get out of Boston, so she takes this job out in the country where she thinks it'll be a little easier and she can devote her time to her daughter. And instead, she jumps out of the frying pan into the fire. She's in a much worse position where she is now, but because of a curse, she's trapped there and has to resolve it. So both Stan and Evie are people that are burdened, and in the anger and frustration of that is what powers the show, because without that, the show doesn't work. I'm going to say this because I was talking to Mel Brooks about this, and Mel Brooks was saying that even in Young Frankenstein, that you believe that Gene Wilder's character is a decent person at heart and that he's obsessed with his father, and the relationship, that relationship with his deceased father is what motivates you through that story, and without that, it doesn't work. Without that, it's just a bunch of jokes. That jokes are beautiful ornaments, but you have to have a tree that's alive to hang them on.
Well, doesn't Judd Apatow say that?
He's
all
Jewish,
about
and he
his
said that
movies
about a
as well?
Christmas tree. I really respect
No,
that.
that's so you can tell where I took over the analogy.
I see.
What drew you to the horror?
You said something
comedy
about
world?
Judd Apatow.
Oh, I mean, I think that's something that he says about all of his movies as well, is that there has to be some kind of core story that is relatable and has heart, that draws people to watch the whole thing. What drew you, though, to the horror comedy genre?
It's the only thing I know how to do. That's it.
You're on The Simpsons.
Yeah, but it's sort of the same thing. Yeah, I mean, I'm a comedian and a comedy writer, and I love horror movies, and so it was just I'd always written other things, and then finally I just had this. I had done a sitcom about my father, who is Stan really, coming to live with my wife and our kids, and Brian Dennehy played my dad, and it was a pilot, and they made it. It didn't go to series. I've had my hand in more failed pilots than an Air Force proctologist, ladies and gentlemen. And at the end of it, Brian was,
Solid.
yeah, Brian Dennehy was so good. I thought, well, I know that character works. What if I just took that character and just dropped him into a show where he didn't belong, and that everybody in the show had to deal with him? What if you just took an a-hole and put him in a different show where he shouldn't be? And basically, I came up with, what if Dana Scully was partnered with my dad instead of Fox Mulder? That's the show.
More pilot proctologist jokes, please. That's what I want right now.
Be careful what you wish for, young man.
John, I've always wanted to ask you this question. I've never interviewed you before, but what's it like to be responsible for the best movies of Oliver Stone's career?
I got invited to do Platoon in 1984, right when I got out of NYU grad. And as soon as I said yes, and I had a tiny role of Tom Berenger's Radio Man, as soon as I said yes, the thing went belly up and went away for 2 years. And then when it was reconstituted in 1986, John Spencer had taken a play up on Broadway, and so I got invited to play the fourth lead. And then we went to the Philippines and did it, and that's what started the relationship with Oliver.
And you were in basically every one of his movies, I think, until Any Given Sunday. Sans maybe like a couple.
I was in 6, but the ones I wasn't in, I was the reader for when actors came in. And so if there was some kind of schedule conflict and I couldn't do it, Oliver asked me to be the reader for the auditioning actors, which was pretty amazing.
Why was that?
Because I love actors, and you want me to read with you. If a reader stinks when you go into audition for something, Janet will tell you, and Dana will tell you, it can change things because you start overcompensating for the reader who is throwing you off a little bit.
Yeah.
And I love actors, and when they all came in uniformly, they had some preconceived notion about Oliver, and would usually engendered terror of some kind. And I wanted you to be great because I love actors, and so you wanted me to be your reader. And it was fascinating.
What was
And I just auditioning is a skill that is
Absolutely.
unrelated to acting in many ways. 100%. And in the case of Janet on the show, I wrote Evie Barret for Janet. Janet and I have been friends for a long time. I never ever saw anybody else in the role. But because of just the nature of the business and my lack of authority, we had to read. You know, we said let's read every female human. Yeah. And Janet came in first and knocked it out of the park. And then we read a lot of other people for the next 2 weeks, and no one even got close.
And he never saw me. I was writing checks right outside the audition room to every woman who came in. I said, I'll give you $50 to tank it. It was worth it. Yeah.
No, but it was true. She, you know, I don't want to embarrass her because she's right here, but it was because I remember us talking and you going, and when it doesn't happen,
Oh, yeah,
we're
'cause
still
nothing
going to
ever
be
works out in Hollywood.
And when it doesn't happen, we're still going to be friends, and this won't have affected anybody. And I was like, I know, but I want it to happen. I can't make it happen, or I would have made it happen, but she made it happen.
Jenna, what was it like having a part written for you like this?
Well, it's what Dana said.
not
It's
know
that when
Did you know that it was written?
But then
No,
you read
he
it and you found out
told
that you
me-
were getting vomited on after the story.
that's how he got me back for flattering me by writing me a part. It involved a lot of goo and vomit. No, I mean that's a true story. There are it is not the first time someone has said I've written this thing that I want you to do, and Johnny's nodding because he knows that this happens. And so that's like a death knell. When you hear that, you're like, okay, 100%, this will never happen. I look forward to seeing whoever it is who's going to play it. I have gotten parts that were written for other people, you know, and that I didn't know until afterwards, you know.
Bumped into them at a party and they're like, oh,
Well, I mean, sometimes. So there's something about that, and I don't know if it's that there's sometimes a process happens by which somebody who isn't Dana, who isn't the creator, who is somebody at a network, just feels like they need to put their stamp on it. And 100% a lot of the time, that means you don't get what you want. You don't get the person you want for this. And I'm so lucky that IFC believed in me and agreed with Dana, because there have been times that hasn't happened. And like I said, that happens to a lot of people. So I really was prepared for it not to work out. And I've never stopped being grateful that it did, because it's just been such a fun experience to do.
It's really just human nature when you're given a choice. Like, what do you have for lunch? Chicken. What else do you got?
Yeah.
Meatloaf. Oh, Meatloaf.
So Meatloaf was actually up to play my role. He's very funny, and he would have written some beautiful music for the show. I'm actually disappointed that he didn't take my part.
And that's why Paradise by the Dashboard Lights is not our theme.
That's right.
He
the
was
only
very mad at
reason.
the rejection at the end.
The only reason.
Other than that,
What do you guys love about playing your characters? What do you love about playing Stan? Is it the damaged aspect that you brought up?
Yes, and I also like that the way Dana writes stuff, it's not 7 syllables in a joke with a hi-hat it's these people dealing with witches, and what the F? It's witches? And so the comedy is underneath these people dealing with something that they're not prepared to deal with. Witches?
Yeah, there's still an element with the characters, even going into the second season, where they're taken by surprise by everything that they have to deal with.
So my favorite thing, not necessarily about playing the character as much as being in Dana's piece, is the tone that he's really meticulously crafted. And think American Werewolf in London. We borrow liberally from that tone. And that's my favorite. That's really hard. That's a hard piece of real estate to occupy.
Yeah, people don't talk about the mundanity of life in high stakes situations in movies, but they do in life. And so, they could be hiding from a werewolf, or in our case, a werepony, but you would be talking about.
I love the pun.
But they would be like, but they would still be like, why is the smaller candy bar called fun size? You would think that the bigger candy bar would be more fun. It's not fun. It's just less. It's stuff that you would talk about in real life.
Can we talk about the werepony of the new season?
Please.
I loved the makeup effects on the werepony. Can you talk about putting that together? I mean, you clearly had like 1 mask, 2 or 1.5 masks to really transition with, but you did an amazing job, and the mask is so cool.
Yeah, well, a lot of credit for that goes to our special effects unit, Autonomous Effects, and Mike McCarty and Jason Collins and Dave Snyder, and our directors on that episode, Jack Bishop and Justin Najim, did a really beautiful job of aping the transformation scene in American Werewolf.
An iconic scene.
Yeah, and it's a little homage and a salute, and none of it's computers. It's all guys in rubber masks and puppets. And
Stephen Ogg, who's amazing and is on The Walking Dead and Westworld, and he came on our show and was so excited to just do comedy.
Yeah.
And he just is so amazing in it. And he had to pull that horse tail that disappears into the jeans. He had to do his own effect where he had to pull that horse tail through a hole in the back of his jeans. And he chafed.
For those of you,
he really chafed.
Stephen Ogg is Negan's lieutenant on Walking Dead, and he was in the middle of that season, and he came in
shooting Atlanta.
Yeah, at the same time. We only got him because Greg Nicotero of The Walking Dead is one of my best friends, and I was like, please let him come over for 4 days because they don't have to let him out of his contract. So. And he came over, and I was like, pulling a horsetail through his pants. And I was like, dude, I'm really sorry. And he's like, are you crazy? I love this.
It's so funny.
The Walking Dead is not fun all the time. It's like,
you mentioned the transition into the werepony there was no CGI and it was all puppetry and practical effects. Obviously, with the show, sometimes you have to do a little CGI, but how often do you get to actually do the sort of practical makeup effects? Which, if you're a horror movie fan, which I am, it's kind of the gold. Like it's
95% of the time we do cleanup only. Like we'll take out posts or wires or something, or maybe smooth over something. But in the first 2 episodes, we have a flying. I thought, well, we have no money. Let's have a monster that flies. That'll be cheap. And we have a demon called a wraith, which comes out of a 200 coffin that's been buried for 400 years, and it flies. And that we did. We had it on a post, and we took the post out, and the puppetry. We smoothed it out a little, but it was very much. No one's looking at a tennis ball. You're looking at a thing.
Which is great for us. We actually get to react to. Remember the first time I saw the pig demon Murgatroyd from our first season? Very scary and crazy and creepy and so much fun to be in a room with instead of looking at nothing.
We also have a demon baby.
Oh, yes.
This season we have a demon baby that becomes a slightly larger demon baby.
It's terrifying and wonderful.
Say that, John, while they're demon baby.
Dana had a dream one night about witches for season 2, and he wrote a note to himself on the side of his bed about a witch being an infant.
Yeah.
And then he wrote it. And
I
it's
just woke up
fantastic.
in the morning. I have a legal pad by the side of my bed, and I usually just wake up in the middle of the night and remember that I have to apologize to somebody for something, so I'll just scribble it down. And I just woke up and on it, it just said, "Demon baby, full size but still a baby." And that's how I saved it.
I'm curious, going back to the practical effects for a minute, though. When you are doing that and you've decided to go practical for the most part, how does that change how you shoot the show and your budget? I mean, I know you guys have a pretty good budget for this kind of. I don't want to say you don't. I'm sure
We have a
some from
pretty good. We have a
IFC
pretty
is around.
good budget in terms of a birthday party.
But I mean, would it be easier to do CG on something like that, or is it actually easier to do
Yeah,
practical?
I think it would probably be it would be slightly more expensive, but I do it because I'm a horror movie fan and I like there's a folk art element to it that I love, and I also believe that when you are doing comedy and horror, this is going to get a little in the weeds. Comedy and horror are cousins. Laughing and screaming do the same things. They are involuntary reflexes that release tension, and they both require separate but equal suspensions of disbelief, and you can't violate either one or all the air goes out of it. So you have to maintain the suspension of disbelief with the creature for the comedy to work, and the suspension of disbelief for the comedy for the creatures to work. In other words, it all has to be based in reality. And so when you see a monster, there can't be anything in your eye that says that's not real. It has to be a real thing, or you don't buy it. And it's just the theory of...
Even when it's like a bad makeup effects, which this show doesn't have, but you think about horror movies in the 80s and Bilal from Basket Case or something.
Yeah.
You know, it's an absurd creature, but it still makes the movie that much more effective simply because you know it's like a practical.
You know it's real,
puppet that's there.
and you know, you can tell that, especially in early CGI, like as great a movie as An American Werewolf in London is, if you want to see how to do that completely wrong, watch An American Werewolf in Paris.
Absolutely. I mean,
know,
the trope of CG horror for
Yeah.
like the last 15 years has been
Yeah.
really depressing as a horror fan.
Yeah,
It takes you out of
it's
the
all
movie.
fluid, nothing moves real, and as a result, you don't buy any. And nobody involved in American Werewolf in London had anything to do with An American Werewolf in Paris.
Is that true?
Yeah, I'm not slagging off my friends.
Yeah.
No, they are friends. John's a friend of mine. Yeah.
Let's get some questions from the audience. Who has a question right here?
Hi. So since a lot of it's practical, were there any physical challenges or any like scenes that were really hard to do physically? And also, would there ever be a crossover with Ash vs. Evil Dead for the show?
We are 100% on board for that. You
Yeah.
know Bruce. I've had Bruce at the Comedy Festival I produce in San Francisco, and so that'd be awesome.
If the only people who would be in the way of it would be lawyers. Everybody on both teams would love it. And yeah, Janet almost drowned in the end of the first episode.
That's one of the things that he probably wakes up and writes in his apology log that we now know exists.
What happened there? How did you almost drown?
Well, we just, we have an amazing special effects team. We have an amazing practical effects team. And they were
Apology log.
very enthusiastic about the witch vomit that it was going to be projectiled onto me in the first episode. And so it was, like 4 a.m. We had been shooting forever. It was Atlanta, which somehow is more hot at night. You would
Yeah.
think that like when the sun goes away, for some reason it would cool down. I'm from a desert, so that's how that works. But no, it gets warmer. The earth opens up and just
Yeah.
hot air comes from the center of the earth.
And it's wet. So imagine living inside a delicious banana bread.
There it is. There it is. But people do it because Atlanta is awesome and it's a beautiful, beautiful. So so Mick Ignis.
Things I've
who
never
is
said to a
wearing
beautiful
this-
woman.
I'm used to it. Mick Ignis, they've sort of got him all set up. He's wearing all his creature makeup and looks amazing and is terrifying. And that's the way that I met him. So I was shocked when I saw him as a real person, which is always fun when you see somebody as a monster first. But and they said, okay, we're just gonna. Out of this hose will spew this organic material. It's there's nothing toxic in it. It's just a sort of a goo. He probably told me what was in it, and I was like, I don't care. Can we just do it to get it over with? And So I'm sort of lying down, and they said, it will just be like, like a 3-second burst of just this horrible stuff will come out. And then we started rolling, and they started, and it just kept coming out of the tube. So I couldn't breathe, and it was like going up my nose.
Now we basically waterboarded.
Yeah,
you.
I was waterboarded with vomit.
That's exactly what they do with
If you
waterboarding.
can, imagine the force that it takes to be lying down and have the vomit shoot down your collar, down your back, and come out your pants. That is how forceful it was, and it was like passing my face. Like every place I breathed was sort of covered in that for quite a long time.
Quite a long time.
And then it was over, and I feel like everyone was like, "Wow, that that was a long time."
And I did walk up to Janet afterwards, and I was just like, "I'm really sorry." I was really late. I was shaken by it. I was like, I'm really sorry.
John, what about you? Have you had any mishaps with stunts or anything?
No, who's
Bob
the
Fisher.
stunt cord? Bob Fisher covers for me. I can't do too many things, and so Janet's like a female Harrison Ford. She can do everything, and.
Well, I like to pretend I can, and then when it goes horribly wrong, we've learned something. But I'm always game to try whatever stuff.
I'm good at fights and stuff, but otherwise the guy, he covers me.
We
Call him in.
He loves it. Bob Fisher is our stunt coordinator. We flipped a car in the end of the first season, and I feel responsible for everybody on the set. So I did say at the end, I was like, Bob, just so you know, you do not have. And he was, I was like, you do not have to do this. And he was like, if you try to stop me from doing this, I'm going to kill you. Like he couldn't wait to do it.
He's one of those people. He's so great at his job. He makes you want to do his job.
Yeah.
Like after I had worked with him for a few days, I was like, I guess I want to be a stunt coordinator.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he's so great. And
If you have a really good double, you want the double doing the hard stuff because he or she's going to make you look so much better.
Yeah.
And if you shoot it right, then it looks like McGinley, or it looks like Janet, and it's not, and it looks 10 times as good.
It also probably makes the day go by. It helps the day as well because they can do it
100%.
a lot faster. Yeah.
Plus, the principals can't get hurt. We shoot 8 episodes in 4 weeks and 4 days. It's not even 5 weeks because we start the day after Memorial Day, and we could use the extra day.
Yeah.
And so people can't get hurt. It's not possible.
So what are you shooting, like 10, 12 pages a day for the most part?
Yeah, it's like Ed Wood, but I'm in men's clothing.
It's preposterous.
Usually.
It's so fast.
Yeah. We do an episode in about 3.5 days.
You do an episode in 3.5 days, including makeup effects and,
Yep.
and gore and all that
Yeah.
stuff?
But
We do.
we're also switching around constantly, so we have to.
Well,
Our
dude,
poor
we-
continuity person has to be like, okay, now we're in episode 6. Your hair was slightly more messy in episode 6, and then we go back to episode 4, and I had a spatter of blood on my cheek or whatever. It's
The actors
really
have
hard
to rehearse the 8 episodes like a play when they're back in Los Angeles, wherever they are, because we're going to shoot completely out of order. If we're at this interior, and this interior is in episode 1, 5, and 8, today, when we're here at this interior, we're shooting out this location.
Like the sheriff's station we share with Stranger Things.
That's right.
What's
Shoot
up?
it out.
If you guys want an autograph by the sheriff's station, I can get that for you.
The kids are
I
hard.
don't know how I'm going to make that happen,
The
but
kids are hard now for autographs.
that's right.
It's gonna happen.
But we shot in the same town. We had a lot of the same crew. And we had wrapped the first season, and then I went home and like, oh, this show Stranger Things, everyone's saying it's great. And they go to the sheriff's station like, oh, I've gone to the bathroom there. I've been in that room before.
Did you guys
It's
shoot
quite
the
literally
same-
exactly the same sheriff's
Yeah,
station.
the
same
same
building. It
sheriff's
looks
station for
different 'cause
season
ours looks
2
really
as well?
grubby.
Yes.
Was it like better decorated and?
No, we had to
Stranger Things
we had to
cast,
scum
like,
it up
rebuild
again. We had to
everything?
scuzzy
There's
it
a
up
lot.
again.
I just rewatched the first season because I was, as many of us, so we were getting ramped up for season 2. And I just rewatched it, and I didn't even realize it was the same sheriff's station. I watched it so fast because we really were like 1 day away from finishing, and I totally binged like we all did, and I didn't realize it. And you said that, so now when I watch the episode, I have like the perspective of, okay, I remember our locations. Now I'm looking at these, and just seeing it like the very last episode where they're having the Christmas party, I was like, we never had lights on. We literally never had lights on. I was like, it's a totally different place. It looks so clean. There's like blinds on and ours
Yeah.
is just like this weird dusty 70s like moldy, don't touch anything sort of effect.
Yeah.
John, I'm curious about what you were just saying about having to shoot them all or rehearse them all like a stage stage play, is that so when you guys get to set, you have every line already memorized? So like they can be like, we're doing this scene from 1 and this scene from 5 and this scene from 8, and you guys already have all of those things for the most part memorized?
100%.
That's insane. That's crazy.
Yeah, we would,
Otherwise, it's not
any
gonna
one of
work
us,
out.
yeah, any one of us unprepared would be
But
a
most-
bleed.
Derail the whole
Most great movies and the things that I love were all done on a budget. Evil Dead 2 is a much better movie for my dollar than Army of Darkness.
Oh, agree. Yeah.
And which is not that I love Sam and I love Bruce and I love everything about that, but it was just
Maybe
like,
agree with you though.
yeah, probably. But they have, within the hard limits, you become very, very ingenious and you move. If I tell a real quick story to give you a great example, we have a demon baby in this episode in the season, and we were going to shoot the conclusion in the woods. I had a big face-off in the woods, and it was the last 2 weeks of production. It rained every day, and we couldn't go out in the woods, and we had to come up with something. And I was talking to the director, Rob Cohen, who I've worked with for decades, and we're like, "What do you want to do?" I don't know. We'll think of something, I guess. And then our set decorator, Molly Coffey, said, "I have an idea. If it's a baby, wouldn't it have a blanket fort? Because we could do a blanket fort in the storefront that used to be the makeup unit, and we can get it." And then we went down there, and then Rob said, yeah, well, if it's a blanket fort, maybe we could do it really labyrinthian. It could be like the Nostromo from Alien, but a blanket fort. And then I thought, right, well, if it's a Nostromo Alien, then the baby's victims can be cocooned up on the wall and blanket. And because we didn't have an option and we couldn't just afford to tent off a part of the woods, if we had a big budget, we'd just throw up a tent and we'll shoot it in the woods, be no problem. We didn't have that option. It forced us to come up with an idea that was much better
I'm so glad.
than the initial idea. And it was letting Molly do her job, let Rob do my job, and then me just coming forward and taking their credit.
Yeah. I feel like we're not. I feel bad if, in case there are questions that we're not going to get to.
No, they're
Sorry, I
telling
got
me to go to
scared.
questions, but I was really fascinated by this story.
Sorry, I'm immediately that person that's like, I want to hug each one of you, and I don't want if you should be able to ask your questions.
We'll be back with more codependence.
That's right. It's going right in the apology line.
Oh, hey, right here. That's why you were standing right here. Yes, go ahead.
Hi, John. My question's for you. So at NYU, you were having this exhilarating high on doing 8 shows a week, and I was wondering, was there any project you just talked about doing an episode every 3.5 days? Does it feel the same as if you're back at NYU and doing these, just preserving yourself to get everything done, just like you did for the 8 shows a week?
Yeah, everything I did before Stan led up to being able to do Stan, because there's so much pressure to get it done in 4 weeks and 4 days that it's not dissimilar to doing 8 a week, which was the mantra at NYU, because you were supposed to preserve your voice and preserve yourself if you have a fight scene 8 times a week. If you get hurt doing a play, you still have to do the matinee and everything else. You can't get hurt. It's not possible when you're doing a play. And when Janet and I and Dana are doing Stan down in Atlanta, everything has to stay. You have to maintain everything. So you have to come prepared, not get hurt, and somehow figure out a way to flourish, doing 1 or 2 takes a setup, maybe a 3rd take if you want to add some of your own personal flavor. But it's very similar to doing 8 a week.
Would you record my outgoing message?
Oh, with your beautiful voice, yeah.
John, where did you find Stan's voice?
That's a good question. Danny gave me as much rope as I wanted to hang myself with, and I wanted the first and most important thing I wanted Stan to be is not Dr. Cox, and so I borrowed liberally from George C. Scott, Sterling Hayden, and Lee J. Cobb, and my father, and all of those guys are way back in here. And all of a sudden, that ain't Cox, and I wanted to divorce all. I didn't want there to be any sensibilities or anything. Not that I didn't enjoy doing that character, but Stan is a whole different monster. He's a whole different animal, and so I felt that was really important. And then Dana let me run with it, and it felt like a license to flourish.
It's also just great facial hair. I'm listening to you, Johnny, and then I'm also distracted by how awesome you look on that poster and how much I love that facial hair with that voice. That's a good
I
combo
showed up
right
with
there.
a full beard first season so that we could carve it up in some way or another. And I started doing it in the hotel room, and I'd send Dana pictures, and he'd go, well, you know, shave a little this thing, shave a little there. And we wound
Take
up.
off your shirt.
Yeah,
It was
take off
really
your shirt
weird. It was a
with
really weird
It was
thing.
weird. But it wound up being an homage to Quint to Robert Shaw in Jaws. It's the exact same. Where we arrived
Yeah.
was Quint.
It was Quint, and it was also, I know we want to, I wrote Stan in the voice of my dad, who's an 87-year-old guy from Massachusetts who talks like this, and it's all, everything's clipped, and I don't care. I don't care. There's a demon on the porch. Good. I don't care. And that was what Stan was to me. So for John, it was a lesson for me as a writer to just like give a character to somebody and go like, this is what I had in mind. You're not that guy. What are you doing? And he became a totally different character, actually, a much better character, much better than I would have thought to write, because he's more dynamic and it fits with the show better, and it's just a different person. So then we kind of got to create this character, you know, together. And you know, once we landed on the look, then it was like, oh yeah, it's Quint with a daughter. What would Quint be like with a daughter if he was landlocked and lived alone with his daughter? And then it was great. It was really exciting and fun to work with competent people. No, I mean, I've always been that lucky. I've always been lucky to work with great people
who bring their own ideas.
Yeah, and I like
yeah.
working with people. You know, I do stand-up comedy a lot, and it's just, you're alone. And it's great to have other people at the table and let them contribute and do their stuff.
I think we have time for one more question. Who is right there?
Hey guys, if and when the evil attacks, what is each of yours best advice on how to fight it?
Like real life evil. I mean, like,
Yes.
if everything that we're afraid of happens in
Voted
real
in
life.
2018 midterms, probably.
Did Elvis give you that ring by any chance?
Yes, he did.
So if let's just stick with if evil attacks. I
Yeah.
don't know about the when. How would you guys fight it in real life?
My favorite weapon that Stan has that I would borrow is that lead pipe. It just works. You bash a witch over the head with a lead pipe. Bang.
I got to go to a deep cut of my childhood when I had a lot of night terrors. And somehow, just as a child in my dreams, I don't know if like my real kid brain understood that I couldn't like wield weapons at that age. But this is totally true. One of the ways that like I conquered night terrors was in my dreams, I started to become aware that they were dreams a little bit. And I would try to act crazier than the thing in the dream that was scaring me. And I still have that. I still have, like, somewhere in the back of my mind, it's probably the worst advice in the world. But somewhere in there, like if I'm walking down like a semi-empty street and passing a dark alley, if I imagine something horrible coming out, my adrenaline fight or flight somehow has been conditioned to be like, you want to get nuts? Like there's some part of me that's like, that'll work. So act crazier than the crazies?
Dana?
Well, I think if the past year has taught people anything, that the most positive thing you can do when faced down with evil is snarky remarks on Twitter.
Dana, I saw that one coming when you started the sentence. I still loved it. I loved it so much.
That one was waving a flag. Here it comes. Here comes the joke. Or girl punches.
Excuse me.
Same thing from the snarky comments on Twitter, really. I think.
Yeah, as about useful.
Guys, I love the show. Congratulations on season 2. It premieres November 1st on IFC the night before. Halloween is a marathon, so people can catch up. Thank you so much for being here. Stand Against Evil, everybody. Give them a round of applause.
You guys.